This video was brought to you by the lovely members of my Patreon.
Now, it's really funny to me to think about what I know a lot of you guys probably imagine BDSMers to be outside of the BDSM community and what I know them to be. I've mentioned this before, but BDSMers are basically just nerds. Hey guys, it's Kat and it's time for another episode of True Tea. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me here for yet another episode of True Tea. We do these videos every single Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I appreciate those of you guys who have made True Tea part of your weekly routine. Some of you guys tell me that you guys wouldn't know what day it is unless Tuesday came on and there was a new True Tea episode, and between you and me, same. What is time even these days? Anyway, what are you guys up to? What have you guys been doing? What have you guys been, changing in your life? I'm very curious to know how you guys are in quarantine. We are still quarantined here in America. I know that everywhere else seems like they've been progressing, but we are unfortunately still in quarantine. So I'm curious what you guys have been doing, what new things have happened in your life. I actually went to my P.O. box recently and I got a ton of new stuff, and I'm so thankful for those of you guys who have sent me things. I wanted to talk about one of the things that I got, or actually a package of things that I got. I got a bunch of things from this person named Golden Moon, Felicia Minor, and she has a soap making business. She also makes these really nice candles. I don't know if you guys can see, but I've got one of the candles that was apparently specifically made for me lit. It smells delicious. I'm wearing this charm bracelet that she made, and I have not yet used this yet, but I'm really, really excited. There is this really beautiful smelling, oh, it smells so good, soap that she made. I don't know, hopefully this, oh yeah, you guys can kind of see in there. I love it. I'm so excited to use this. I've been working all day, so I'm really excited to, pop off a piece of this and use this in the shower. Thank you so much to those of you guys who have sent me things. I love receiving things in the mail. I don't know when this video is going to go out, but my birthday is coming up soon. So if you guys are interested in sending me birthday things, my P.O. box is always in the description box, as well as my wish list if you're interested in getting me something specific that you know that I would like. So yeah, anyway, we're gonna be having a conversation about the BDSM community. But before we do, I would highly suggest you go to your kitchen and grab yourself something to drink. Also in my P.O. box, I managed to get a package of these Fraser Zero teas. The company sent these to me and I've been drinking them. These are tea with hemp extract. There is 25 milligrams of hemp in this. And I don't know exactly what the hemp does, but it tastes earthy, and I like to think that I'm an earthy person. So thank you so much to Fraser for sending these to me. This is the natural hibiscus iced tea, which is actually my favorite of the two that they sent me. So I'll take a sip of this and let's get right into this conversation. So I want to have a conversation with you about the BDSM community for a couple of reasons. First of all, recently I've uploaded a review of 50 Shades of Grey. It's doing really well, and I talk in that video about my feelings about how the film depicts BDSM and a lot of things that went through my mind as a BDSMer. And while that video is also doing really well, I uploaded a video like a year ago about the problems that I had with the BDSM community. And I think that whenever you criticize something, that's always going to be the thing that people like to look into the most. And it's really easy for me to only talk about the negative. But in this video, I actually wanted to have a conversation with you guys about the positive things, the things that I really love about the BDSM community, because if I didn't like it, I probably wouldn't be part of the community. So that's what this video is going to be about. And like usual, I always want your guys' tea. So if you're part of the BDSM community, please feel free to share with me how you feel in the comment box below as well. So yeah, let's get into it. So if you did not watch my video about my problems with the BDSM community, I will give you a quick summary of what my problems are. I joined the LA BDSM community when I moved out here about 4 years ago at this point. And when I came out here, I was really, really excited to actually become part of the BDSM community, especially because I was living in Orange County, and at the time I was living in Orange County, there was one dungeon that was open. That dungeon ended up closing, and then of course I moved here and two opened up again. But LA was always a place that had more of the dungeons, more of the activity, so I was really excited to come out here. And one of the things I realized with time is that everyone has their own sort of philosophy around BDSM. A lot of people have their own sort of feelings and perspectives, and sometimes those things clash. Sometimes those things, you know, are not always compatible. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of people in LA who are very loud and open and proud about their BDSM. And one of the things I learned with time is that unfortunately a lot of those people, the loud, give me attention, look at me kind of people, they may sell BDSM very well, but oftentimes those people who are vying for attention, vying for eyes on them, trying to become popular in their BDSM, oftentimes those people are abusive. Not all the time, but oftentimes. And one of the things that really disappointed me as I sat in the community for longer is how many people were in power who were abusive. That was something that was really, really hard for me personally to deal with, because I had, and I still have, this sort of weird conflicting feeling of, I love this. I know that the practices that I have are healthy. I have a lot of friends, a lot of enjoyment out of this community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I can't ignore this issue. And this issue means that maybe I can't interact with the community in the way that I wanted to when I first came to LA, and I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and I didn't know any better, and I didn't see all of the bullshit around me. So my feelings about the BDSM community have shifted in that I no longer feel excited about going to public parties. I no longer feel excited about dungeons. Every dungeon says that they're better than the other dungeon. Everyone has their own view of each dungeon. And if we're being honest, if we're being real, every single one of these dungeons has problems. Every single one of them. There may be some that are safer than others, but every single one of them has its issues. The people that I know that are abusive, a lot of them have homes at every single one of these dungeons. So, you know, what I'm basically saying is that my feelings about the BDSM community have shifted and changed. And where I am now is a place where I want to be part of the BDSM community, but it's going to be different. Now, these were feelings that I was having already before the pandemic. Before all of this happened, before COVID, I already felt this way. And so I guess I wanted to talk about that, because obviously if I'm in this position where I'm not really that crazy about the dungeons, there's clearly something that I want to hold on to. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about why exactly I wanted to be part of a BDSM community. Now, in my video that I do about 50 Shades of Grey, I talk about the fact that there are some people who do what I would call bedroom BDSM, and then there are some people who are part of a BDSM community. And for me, I've always appreciated the community because theoretically, you are in a community of people, and so the BDSM practices that you have are not something that just sort of stays in one room. You have objectivity with more than one person observing what you're doing, and oftentimes that tends to mean safer play that is more satisfactory, you know, and I appreciate that. That's something that is really important to me. I don't want to just do this to do this, you know. And so for me, I wanted to join a community because I wanted to feel safe. I wanted to feel safe first and foremost, because you can meet, you know, Dommy McDomerson, who's got a bunch of toys, and you can have him come over to your place, or you go over to his place, and he's got his little private dungeon, and anything could happen to you. Anything could happen to you. So going to public parties was one of my main focuses when I first came out in LA, right? But for me, the first step to me having access to these parties, these public open parties, was I wanted to get to know people. I wanted to get to know the community. So I started going to these things that we call munches. And munches are basically just these, everyone meets at a bar or a club or a restaurant, and we all just sort of hang out with each other, and you know that you're amongst BDSMers. Now, it's really funny to me to think about what I know a lot of you guys probably imagine BDSMers to be outside of the BDSM community and what I know them to be. I've mentioned this before, but BDSMers are basically just nerds. They're basically just nerds. Like most BDSMers that I know are just massive nerds. You know, in LA, I used to go to, who knows about the pandemic, I go to this one house that is basically a Dungeons and Dragons house, right? They're known for every Sunday they do Dungeons and Dragons, and I love them all to bits, and they kind of live in their own sort of like awesome little fantasy world, right? But that is such a central hub for a lot of the people that I know who practice BDSM. This house where people just kind of come together and play Dungeons and Dragons. And it's really common for your standard BDSM munch, outside of the ones that I mentioned at restaurants and bars and things, to be game night. You know, it's playing board games with your friends and just sort of hanging out. And one of the great things for me about being in a community of BDSMers doing that thing is that you don't have this pressure to not talk about who you are. And that's really, honestly, the core of what I appreciate about the BDSM community. Now, I don't know if this is clear or not by a lot of the content that I make, but I'm somebody who does not thrive in situations where I have to hide myself. I am somebody who I work the best when I feel like I can just be myself, right? A lot of the areas in my life where I have excelled have come from situations where I feel that I could fully and completely just be myself. And I know that a lot of people go through this, and there's a lot of people who are in the community who I know who still go through this. But we have a lot of pressure in society to compartmentalize, you know, to not quite express yourself as a person who is interested in anything other than missionary with the lights off. You know what I mean? Like a lot of us are kind of encouraged to not share how we feel, to not share, you know, what our interests are specifically. And I've always felt that that was stifling. Not that I need to broadcast it to everybody, but I don't like this sort of conversations I have with myself when I feel like talking about my sexuality in general is this thing that I can't discuss and shouldn't discuss, right? I don't respond well. I understand the social, you know, how I understand how people do. I understand that it's common for people not to do that, but I don't work very well in situations where I feel like I can't just acknowledge that part of myself. That's why, you know, a lot of BDSMers, you will go to their events and you meet them and they've got some name that is not their own. I have never had a fake name. I have never had an alternative screen name or a scene name, as a lot of people call it. I've always just been Kathryn. I've always just introduced myself as Kathryn because that's who I am, and I don't like to compartmentalize myself. So the thing that I've really appreciated about the BDSM community is how open and accepting it is. How awesome it feels to be in a scenario where you don't really have a reason to hide any of the weird shit about you, because while we're all weird here, why would you feel encouraged to hide? Now, of course, people still do hide, but for me, in my life, I've always wanted to be the most confident and the most open and the most real, right? That's just always been, I don't want to feel like I'm lying, right? I want to be able to be open about everything, really. So I respond really well in a situation where people are sort of encouraged to be open. I've go to a couple of different BDSM Zoom conversations that are connected to the communities that I participate in. And a couple of weeks ago, there was this girl, this trans girl, newly out transgender girl, who was in the Zoom call with us. And she was really, really upset about the dungeons closing down. And her reason for being upset was because she went to a couple of BDSM events, and for the first time in her life, she felt that she could fully be herself. She felt that she could fully just let her freak flag fly without worrying about people judging her. And then, of course, right as she gets into it, the pandemic hits and we all have to stay inside. And she was talking about going to this party that someone was hosting during the pandemic. And we were all basically saying, hey, that's a really bad idea. Going to a play party during a pandemic, that's a really, really shitty, terrible idea. And she got really defensive. She was like, I don't know why you don't want me to go to this party. I can't live without BDSM. And she was honestly being very, very, very irrational. You know, she was like, I'm gonna do it, and you're closed-minded for saying I shouldn't do it, and da-da-da-da-da. And I won't get into all of it, but she was getting really defensive at the idea of all of us BDSMers who had been in the community for a while, who want to protect everyone and keep everybody safe and healthy, saying that you shouldn't go to this event because it's just gonna make things worse. And while I thought that what she was saying was really irrational and silly, at the same time, I remember what it felt like to be in my first sort of open, accepting space and feeling like, oh my gosh, this is the place where I belong. This is the place where I can truly, fully be myself. And the thing about that is that that's really true for a lot of, you know, I guess I can just talk about trans girls, because there is this really weird thing where, you know, you've got your sort of gay BDSM groups, and then you've got your pansexual BDSM groups, which in so many ways does translate to straight, right? Even though everyone's welcomed, it's usually straight people who ends up showing up. And when it comes to trans acceptance, the pansexual groups, AKA the straight groups, are usually far, 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 far more accepting of trans women. A lot of the spaces that are specifically for gay men or specifically for gay women basically do not want trans women in their spaces. Now, I wouldn't want to be in a gay woman's space or a gay man's space personally. I feel very at home at your pansexual event. But there are a lot of transgender people who come up in the gay community and they feel very ousted because they can't participate in those spaces once they transition. So in so many ways, the heterosexual BDSM community ends up being one of the most accepting spaces if you are somebody who is kinky. Now, I guess I should add that I am a kinky person, and that's part of who I am. It's not something that always defines me, but it's not something that I feel healthy hiding. I did that for a while. It didn't make me feel great. And it's not like I need to broadcast it. It's not like it needs to be everywhere. Of course, we have conversations about it on here, but it's a part of me that I don't feel good hiding. And so for me, having a community where I'm not doing that was very, very important. In fact, being part of that community and identifying with it more made it so that I felt more comfortable having these conversations with you guys, because really, what do I have to be uncomfortable with? It's part of my life, and it is, you know, it's almost as passe as everything else that I do, right? So I love the fact that the BDSM community for a lot of trans folks is so accepting when you're a kinky trans person. That's really, really important. And for a lot of us, it does feel like one of the only places where we are accepted. Now, I won't get into too much of this, but there are a lot of layers and nuances that come with that. You know, for a lot of, you know, when I first came into these sort of alternative communities, these sort of sex communities and things like that, even though BDSM isn't sexual for everybody, but I'll get to that later. I definitely was coming into it being exploited. That's one of the things that I feel like is important for me to acknowledge. I went to my first swing BDSM event when I was 18. Literally the week I turned 18, I was talking to this dude when I was underage, and he was waiting for that week for me to turn 18 so he can take me to a party. You know, and was not the healthiest experience for me. It was really not the healthiest experience for me. You know, but it was one that I had, and I can't ignore that that's part of me. And so I will say that for me, I had a really unhealthy exposure to some of these communities early on, because they were one of the few communities that at least felt to me at the time like they were accepting. Now, the community that I was part of when I was 18 is very different from the community I'm part of now. When I was younger, the community was definitely more of a swing community, which was more of an explicitly sexual community. The BDSM community is not really like that. There is some intersection with swing and BDSM, but for the most part, BDSMers are BDSMers, and everybody likes BDSM for various different reasons. You know, I've talked about a little bit of why I like BDSM on here, but for me, it's a lot of escapism, and for me, a lot of it's about pushing myself physically. I kind of compare it to working out. You know, sometimes when you're getting a workout in and you're trying to push your body a little bit more and more and more and more and more, and then if you work out a lot, you get really kind of almost addicted to that feeling of pushing yourself more and more and more, and what it feels like after you've done that and you survived. For me, that's my personal high. I really enjoy being in a scene and taking on more than I initially think I could take, and then being relaxed after I did that, being satisfied with myself after I did that. That's one of the things that keeps me coming back to a lot of the BDSM stuff. But honestly, a lot of it just feels good, you know? A lot of it just feels nice, and it feels nice for me to submit and to let go in that very controlled space, especially with a person that I deeply trust, right? And so for a lot of us, we know that that's an important feeling. We know that that's an important thing. And that's why we want community around that, because we want to be able to have that thing and know people that are also getting that thing and know how to do and know how to give that thing. That's kind of why it's so important for me personally. And I just want to be clear, I'm never trying to sell anything to you guys on here. I don't want to try to sell you guys BDSM. It's not for everybody. And to be honest with you guys, I don't even necessarily feel confident encouraging new people to experience it, because in so many ways I look at what the BDSM community has been, and like I discussed in depth in my video about my problems with the community, there's a lot of bullshit. There's a lot of bullshit, and I don't even know the right way to explain to somebody how you would come into the BDSM community if you didn't know what to do and how to do it at first, right? But I will say that for me, it's a very important group of people to me. And here's the thing about the community. When this pandemic hit, when I was feeling really sad at the very beginning, when I was feeling really paranoid, when I needed help moving, because I moved 2 months before, well, when I needed help moving, I had this large community of people who were willing to help me. It's a community that's not much like any other community that you would have when you're, you know, kind of coming together around a hobby. It's not really that different, except we can talk about the sexy stuff and no one judges us, you know? It's so nice to have those relationships. And I've met so many people who I know are my lifelong friends because we have that degree of openness with each other. And to me, there's nothing more rewarding than being in a relationship with people that is open, you know, where you don't feel like you have to ignore certain aspects of yourself. You can have a conversation about the raw, ugly shit that you don't feel comfortable talking about with everybody, with people who you know have done similar self-work, have done similar processing. But of course, finding that community within the community is not easy. It's not easy to find people who are on your same level. And personally, where I'm at right now, I mean, the pandemic is kind of making this more viable, is I don't really want to interact with public BDSM events anymore. I want to have my own private sort of things with people that I trust. And I have enough people in my life to know that that's, you know, what I want. Maybe one day we'll make a video about my idealized vision of maybe what sex positive life would look like for me, sex positive communities rather would look like for me, because the way shit is now, I'm not a huge fan. But yeah, for me, I guess that's kind of why I love the BDSM community. It makes me feel very loved and embraced fully, and not in a compartmentalized way. You know, I'll never forget that I was hanging out with some of my LGBT friends, and they were like, what do you even get out of this BDSM shit? Like, what do you get out of it? And they said it with such a tone of judgment that really communicated to me that I can't be open with them. And I've never really liked relationships like that. I mean, maybe one day we'll do a video unpacking that, but I've ran away from a lot of people who have encouraged me not to be open about who I am and myself. I've run away from people like that all the time. When I get even a hint of judgmental shit, I lose all interest in wanting to be close to those people. So yeah, that sucked, but it's, I think it really means a lot to find your tribe. It really means a lot to find the people who you can call family. And I found a lot of those people in the BDSM community, and I love and miss them so much. The fact that we've all stayed in contact over Zoom, over Facebook, over, you know, the internet and things, I think that really says a lot. I think that for a lot of people over this quarantine, you've really seen who's your friend and who's not, who's in your life for a season, who's there for life. And I'm really happy to report that a lot of my lifelong friends are BDSMers. So yeah. Anyway, on that note, I think I've said everything I want to say. I'm really curious for those of you guys who are BDSMers, who are part of a community, how you guys have felt in the quarantine, what is going to change with your BDSM community. A lot of conversations we've been having now have been about whether or not dungeons are ever going to be a thing. I'm kind of feeling like they're not going to be, or they're going to be in very limited use, which to me is not always the worst thing in the world. So I'm very, very curious how the conversations are evolving in your community and why you love being part of the BDSM community so much. So if you are part of the BDSM community, I would love to hear all about that. So yeah, anyway, on that note, if you've made it through this entire video, I would put this emoji in the comment box below. You don't have to put the emoji, it's not a requirement. No one has to do anything. I'm just gonna say the cool kids are doing it. You know, everybody who's cool is putting the emoji in the comment section. So, you know, it's truly up to you. You don't have to do anything at all. But I'm saying if you care about being cool, you would put the, you know, you would do that. You would do it. I'm just saying, do what you want. Anyway, on that note, I will see you guys next week. Right now, you're looking at 2 videos you can watch if you'd like to continue to sip true tea right here on this channel. And in the corner, there are several ways for you to send a tip if that's something that you would like to do. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys next week. Bye.